Welcome, one and all, to another episode of Pacific414 episode review. I am your host, Mike, and in this episode, I'm going to be talking about episode 11 of The Bad Batch, Devil's Deal. Now, Devil's Deal opens up on the planet Ryloth, where we see Omfrey Ta, the senator of Ryloth, speaking to the masses. And he's speaking to the masses about the Empire taking over the planet. One of the things he brings up in his speech is that the citizens of Ryloth must give up their weapons. Of course, the citizens are vocal about not wanting to give up their weapons due to the fact that they have fought for their freedom and they fought hard for their freedom and they've earned their freedom. And of course, things aren't going well for the senator because of the people reacting and not particularly liking the idea of giving up their weapons to the Empire. And of course, there with them is Vice Admiral Rampart, who's the Empire's figurehead in this episode, and he's trying to persuade the senator to have his people go along with the deal. Of course, they won't, so who's there? Well, Sham Syndulla, and not only Sham Syndulla, but also his wife, Eleni Syndulla. And you know who they are, and if you don't know who they are, well, they are the mother and father and also freedom fighters, along with their daughter Hera, who we first met in Star Wars Rebels. Well, he's there, and he starts talking to the people and mentioning the fact that, Ryloth is free once again. Everybody has fought hard. The clone troopers came in, and the clone trooper that we're introduced to, and I'm sure we've seen them before. It's just, you know, everything trying to remember what trooper shows up in what episodes and what series. Of course, it would be Clone Wars in this case. Is Captain Hauser is brought forth, and Sham tells the people everything's going to be all right. The Empire is here to keep us safe with the new Empire in charge. Unlike with the Republic, everything will be peaceful and in order. In the episode, during this speech, we also cut to Gobi Gill. And Gobi Gill is part of the freedom movement, as we all know by now. He's being watched by Crosshairs and several other clone troopers. Then the episode cuts to Hera and she's with Chopper. They're exploring an area of Ryloth where there's a Imperial installation. We see that Hera is daydreaming and looking up at the clouds, dreaming about flying, and of course, we all know, and if you didn't know already, Hera in Rebels is the pilot of the Ghost. What ends up happening is a couple of clone troopers come along and they see Chopper and Hera where they really shouldn't be, where they don't belong, in restricted Imperial grounds. So they take Chopper and Hera back to Sham and Eleni. Eleni says to Hera, "What did you do now?" But she doesn't say it directly to Hera. She says it looking over the grounds as she sees the troopers along with Captain Hauser bring Hera and Chopper to the area. And of course, as this is going on, Gobi and Sham are having a disagreement about giving up their weapons to the Empire. And of course, we see a lot of people surrendering their arms. But it's not going to last too long because after Sham and Gobi have their conversation, and of course, Hera tries to explain herself, and her mother figures it out real quickly that Gobi sent her on a spying mission on the Empire. We come to find out that Gobi has set up a rendezvous to reacquire some weapons. So Gobi and a few other Twi'leks, along with Hera, go on to Gobi's ship. We go off-world onto another planet where they're meeting the suppliers of the weapons, and the suppliers of these weapons are none other than Clone Force 99. So, Gobi and Clone Force 99 exchange the weapons. Hera's curiosity, piques her interest in the Marauder. Hera wants to go on board. Hera is given permission to go on board once Omega asks Hunter if it's okay for Hera to come on board. Omega gives Hera a little tour of the ship, mainly the flight deck, sensors, navigation, the hyperdrive. Hera and the rest of the group depart after this brief little meeting between Clone Force 99, Omega, and Obi and Hera. So they end up going back to Ryloth. Now, what I didn't mention, and I'm going to mention right now, is when they were headed back to Ryloth, Crosshairs put a tracking device on their ship. He shot it onto the hull of their ship. So they're making their approach back on to Ryloth, getting ready to land inside a canyon. Crosshairs shoots the starboard side engine, causing the ship to crash. Hera, Gobi, and the rest of the crew on board Gobi's ship are arrested and taken on an Imperial tank transport that used to be a clone tank transport. So, when this information is given to Sham and Eleni, well, they mount a rescue operation. Of course, Chopper shows up because, Chopper's always going to stick close to Hera, and Hera had told Chopper to stay behind. Well, Chopper goes frantically beeping and bopping, letting her parents know that Hera's in danger. Of course, Shem and Eleni already know this. What ends up happening is there's a rescue mission. This rescue mission goes pretty much according to plan. Few of the clones are taken out. The tank is intercepted. One of the Twi'leks climbs aboard the tank and gets in to the bridge of the tank, knocks out the clone trooper, overrides the controls, manages to stop the tank. While this is going on, Crosshairs is on top of the ridge, looking over everything. Hera's parents come in, they rescue Hera. Of course, Senator Ta is not too pleased because Hera is considered a conspirator, and it implicates Sham and Eleni, and he wants them all arrested. That doesn't happen. Crosshairs ends up shooting Senator Ta in the head. And of course, false charges are brought forth onto Hera and her parents. Hera manages to escape on board the speeder that's being driven by Chopper at the time. Meanwhile, Hera's parents are captured along with Gobi, and Hera's worried. And of course, that's where the episode cuts out. So, this episode, all intents and purposes, was an alright episode. It was a filler episode, and the reason why I say it was a filler episode is the Bad Batch in this episode were guest stars in their own show. This was more in line with Rebels since it had Hera and Chopper and, of course, Hera's parents. So, honestly, instead of calling it Star Wars Bad Batch, they should have just called it Star Wars Rebels The Lost Episode. That's what it felt like to me. Not to say this episode was terrible. It was just another filler episode that we've gotten quite a few of this season in all these 11 episodes that we've seen so far. Yes, we did get to see Crosshairs in this episode, and he did play, a minor part in this episode, but it was mainly about Ryloth and the Twi'leks being taken over by the Empire. Jam, Eleni, and Gobi, still wanting to fight for Ryloth's actual freedom, since the Empire is going to occupy their homeworld. This wasn't a bad episode. I just don't understand why it had to be a filler episode. Why it couldn't have just been an episode of, Rebels. Maybe you wouldn't have had crosshairs in the episode. Maybe you would have, but again, this was a filler episode. We've already seen far too many of them already this season, and I'm not saying this show is a bad show. It's just when your your main cast being, Hunter, Wrecker, Tech, Echo, and Omega are basically sidelined and guest stars and what's supposed to be their own show. Well, I'm sorry, just that's just not good storytelling, in my opinion. If you're gonna have your characters be guest stars in their own show, it's much it's much in the same vein as the cast of Star Trek Enterprise felt when These Are the Voyages was the final episode to be produced by Rick Berman and Company, and how they felt that they were sidelined in their own episode, in their own show, for Marina Sirtis and Jonathan Frakes. Marina Sirtis, Counselor Troy, and Jonathan Frakes, Commander Riker, since their part of that episode it was supposed to be taking place during the episode Pegasus, and that was a 6th season episode of Next Generation. So the cast of Enterprise felt sidelined, and if Hunter, Wrecker, Tech, and Echo and Omega were actual actors, well, they would have felt sidelined in this episode, since they were only guest stars in this episode, and it mainly had characters that we first were introduced to in Star Wars Rebels. So, if you like episodes where the main cast is sidelined, well, then this is the episode for you. If you like episodes where it involves the main cast and then your guest stars are guest stars, well, this isn't the episode for you. I know there are going to be some people saying, but they're just trying to give you another backstory to what went on after the Republic was formed into the Galactic Empire and how things went downhill and went downhill fast. I understand that, and that could have been told in Rebels. That was a story that they could have very well have told even more so than they did in Rebels. Because by that time, the Empire was in full control of the galaxy. The Rebel Alliance was in its infancy. It was just pockets of Rebel fighters. It wasn't unified until later on. And it just sidelines the entire show for me. If you're going to have this group of elite forces, group of elite troops sidelining their own show because you want to tell this other side story, well, again, it should have been saved for the show that it was meant for, and that show was Star Wars Rebels. That's pretty much how I feel about this episode. You know, my thoughts on this episode probably won't change even after rewatching it, because I've already watched it 3 times now, and I still feel the same way. I still have that same thought process that this was an episode better suited for Rebels, not suited for the Bad Batch. You don't sideline your main characters to focus on characters who've already had their own show, and again, I'm gonna say it one more time. This story could have been told in Rebels if they had given it, another episode run in, say, season 3 or even season 2, where Hera could have been having a flashback, and this could have been touched upon. But you just don't sideline your main characters in their own show. I know I've already said that, but I'm going to keep saying it. You don't do that. That's just bad writing, in my opinion. And I've already mentioned Enterprise being one of the main culprits of one of the franchises that I enjoy besides Star Wars, having already done that back in 2005. So that's going to be my review of Devil's Due, the 11th episode of The Bad Batch. Hope you all liked what you saw. If you did like what you saw, please give this video a thumbs up. Share this video with your friends. Leave a comment down in the comment section below whether you liked it or not. And until next time, this has been Mike for Pacific 414 episode reviews. And I will see you all later. Take care.